no matter where you're coming in from, you have a knowledge base that you can bring into data that's actually really helpful. So I would highly encourage to look at the ways that your previous knowledge is transferable. There's always some new way to find what you're good at that can be leveraged in the data space.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're sharing all the tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits to make you the best data professional you can be. Today with us, we have Phoenix J. How are you doing today, Phoenix?
I'm doing great. How are you, Monica?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so very glad to have you on the show.
Me too. Excited to be here.
So, we typically start off our episodes by understanding people's origin stories. So, if
Cool.
you could please tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yeah, so let's see. Before I start with my career, I'll talk about myself a little bit. I'm someone who just loves like numbers, gamification, and I, when I went to undergrad, I was studying statistics. I love math and numbers, and then it wasn't until my master's in data that I really understood the impact of stories in the larger world. And so until I had started in my studies, it was mostly just like using Excel data cleaning, but then being able to actually look at the insights over time and being able to communicate that to different stakeholders, that's where I got started. And then now this is where I am.
So, what are you doing today in the data field?
So I'm in transition now. I've been a manager and an individual contributor, but I have typically worked with data and analytics teams either on the engineering side or on the insights and strategy side. And so often I've sat as an analytics engineer in between where the data engineer is moving the data and the analyst is typically finding the insights. I'm someone who's been a liaison in between.
I think being that liaison in between those two worlds is one of my favorite parts of kind of that data, the data world. Would you agree?
I definitely agree. Being that liaison, that librarian, someone that's subject matter expert, but definitely both on the like business, the product side, as well as understanding what's underneath the hood and how things connect together. That's part of what I love about games and puzzles and how I got here.
Yes. I like the framing it as a librarian because people come to you wondering, like, oh, where is this book? You know where that book is, and you also know where other books are that they might be interested in.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So, in the data world, what are your favorite problems to solve or favorite insights to kind of uncover?
Mhm. So in my background, I've worked with both healthcare data as well as the like medical education side of things. So that's something where it's been really valuable. It's something where it feels like I can really give back and help and make sure that the outcomes can help a student grow or help someone who's coming. They're looking for a way to um, you know, to heal and feel better, knowing that the data and insights that I can give to I worked for a health tech startup where I could help make that app better for the users. That's something that's been, it's every month we would have an all hands and we would hear the stories. We would hear about what people were experiencing outside of the app and then when after using the app, how it would help them um, just have more hope, and that's something that I take with me. So it's the stories that keep coming back to.
I always love when you get feedback for any type of, dashboard or report or anything that you're building for your clients or for the community, and you get that feedback of how helpful or even like how you can improve it to
Mhm.
be even more helpful for others.
Right, right, and that feedback is so important. it's important to make sure that people are in a safe space to give that feedback, but also that it's part of the culture or part of one's own values sometimes to ask for that feedback, asking for when it would be a good time to give that feedback, whether it's in the moment or whether it's via an email or a Slack message after, or even I've asked the question of, do you prefer to talk about like critical feedback in the morning versus the afternoon? I'm an afternoon person. I'd rather, talk about it then, but understanding when to ask for feedback and when to um, how often to ask for it. That's a really big part of what I do as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point in like how often do you want feedback, and also I really like the idea of like what time of day would you prefer the feedback, because
Mm,
like for me personally, I work really well creatively in the morning and then more administratively in the afternoon, and so like
yeah.
you are in a totally different like mindset at different
Hmm.
times of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm someone who's the exact opposite. So that has happened before. And having those questions ahead of time with either a manager or a stakeholder, it might be like, oh, like, why is this so, like, sometimes it can feel pretty cranky and a lot of tension, every morning. It's like, oh, okay, we just need to align our schedules. Maybe that's all it is. And then once you're able to um, ask for that feedback and implement it, it can help to build trust among the data uh, outcomes and with the stakeholders, and it helps to just make everything more streamlined, a little easier. So, highly recommend making sure that the feedback portion is taken care of. It's a really big skill in the data world.
And a lot of what you have been saying reminds me about just the data community in general and being supportive of each other, asking, questions, being respectful, giving everyone a safe space. And I think that you are a really good person to allow others to have that safe space and community. So, and I know that you also have some community groups that you're part of. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah. So there are a variety of groups across Slack and Discord that um, are some of the larger, hundreds or thousands of people that are on it. And there's some that I use that are actually more um, like small groups, small intimate, like almost like parties, like a like video game parties of adventurers. It's something where um, the different communities can help each other thrive. I'm also a part of a group, Data Angels, that runs a data mentorship match. So I've been involved with that as well, and it's part of these communities that whether you have like manager in your title or not, you can still be a mentor to someone else. If you've been in your career, you can reach out to someone who is still finishing up their studies. Perhaps if you're um, you know, if you are more advanced, you can help someone. Let's say you've been a manager for a while, you can help someone who's a first-time manager, that kind of thing. But these communities that I've been a part of, it's been really a place for developing that leadership skill, developing the technical skills, and being able to share that there's something that you built. Making sure, of course, that sharing nothing that's too sensitive for your company, but of course, you can share the approach, and you can get feedback again. Bringing back feedback and being able to implement it. Uh, it gives you a space to grow, as well as helping others to grow who might not have thought of that exact line of code. Or perhaps there's something new that um, maybe a few years ago hadn't been released yet. And perhaps there's been a patch, perhaps there's been a new version that's come out. That's something that community can help with. And also something more recently I've noticed when using AI tools. So I know a lot of people are talking about vibe coding these days. A lot of people are talking about all the different ways to use AI, and that's one of the ways. Sometimes uh, in you leveraging those tools, you can find that there's something new that hadn't been there before.
You talked about this a little bit already, kind of alluded to the fact that there are different ways that you can develop yourself as a leader without having that leadership title while you are being, you are that individual contributor IC. So, can you kind of deep dive into that? How do you become a leader without having that title?
Absolutely. It's about taking the initiative to move forward in a way that is authentic. It's a way that you can move forward. You can add, you can set expectations. You can, um, when you're able to set expectations and, for example, set documentation ahead of time that someone coming in later can learn from, helping someone new onboard, that's something that's a huge way that you don't need to have manager in your title to be able to do things that lead and communicate with stakeholders. So being proactive, setting those expectations, having an awareness of how not just what your work is doing that has an impact on you, but how it has an impact on other teams. Um, and building those relationships out. I remember when I started at the health tech startup I mentioned earlier. It was my first few weeks. They gave me an onboarding packet, and I met with everyone on the onboarding packet. And I also took the initiative to reach out to another team, the DevOps team. And I could tell they're a little bit confused of, it's that wasn't what they were expecting. But I wanted to set this expectation that I wanted to break down silos. Nothing, I wasn't just, it wasn't a wrecking ball, but it was starting to have those conversations. It was starting to ask about what impact were they having? What were some resources that they were missing that we could help with? And within the first few weeks of starting, there were resources that had been delayed for months before I joined that we were able to gain pretty quickly and pretty smoothly through that, and that was without necessarily having manager in the title, but it was a way to be a leader as an IC.
Absolutely. I have a similar story when I was auditing, one of my projects was auditing incident tickets around our field workers, those folks that were out on the field doing maintenance work and all of that. And I really wanted to understand more about the work that they did. So I asked my manager if I can do a ride along, and he agreed, and I spent the entire day, we were driving around the city, and I was watching them do maintenance and seeing all of the processes and procedures that were in place to keep everything safe and secure. And so what I learned there, I was able to bring back to my work to then help them do better jobs and be more safe in the work that they did.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to have that um, initiative and be able to bring that. It helps to empower everybody.
Yeah. And plus, I just really like learning all of the things. So it's very
Yeah,
fun to just step outside of my day to day work and learn what other people did at their jobs.
yeah, that ability to integrate the different rules and the different like what we see, yeah, it definitely helps for everyone's growth.
All right. So you mentioned something earlier about puzzles and gamification. So I really would like to transition into our nerdy fun bits at this time.
Yes, sounds good.
All right. So we talked a little bit previously about this gamification of learning, and you have some new ideas on how you can leverage this with AI. So let's
I
get into
do.
this.
Yeah. So one of the ways that I started out was, the general. Um, I love the gamification of, for example, data camp and being able to go there and have those dailies and leaderboards and that kind of thing. And then moving over to lead code questions, also asking sort of, what's the business reason, not just looking at the code itself. And then I was thinking, um, we've got to leverage AI, right? Like that's what's on everybody's mind right now. And so whether it's using AI to have a conversation back with you, like what are the business reasons? What are the things that could have happened? Sometimes it's that the table is designed in such a way and it needs to be adjusted. And sometimes you can even use it to, like when we talked earlier about having a party of adventurers in community, let's say that you need like the accessibility of having someone right there, you can turn to one of the generative AI tools and ask it to be your player too. You can ask it, don't give me the answer. Tell it from the start, don't give me the answer. Just let's walk through it with me. Let's turn it into a game. And it's very happy to do that with you. So it's something where I found a lot of value out of that, where especially I would recommend making sure to do as much of the problems on your own, of course. But when you get there and you get into the gamification of it and it starts to ask you critical thinking questions where you might feel a bit shaky on the concept, it can help validate that you do know what you're talking about. I remember having a moment going through, it's like, oh yeah, I definitely know this. There's something that I'm missing. And it was helpful to guide me in that direction, like a teacher or like someone who's holding you accountable. So, highly recommend using AI in that way.
Do you have a specific example of like a one-on-one back and forth conversation that you've set up and how it helped you?
It was helping someone else to learn, and I was walking them through it. And um, when they were asking the questions, it was asking back, what would it look like, when you're setting up this table A with table B, and you're looking for a visits to a store where customers did not make any purchases, and you want to join the tables, and so what would it look like? What would the column come back to say if and it's like, oh, like wouldn't it be null? It was the kind of thing where you could see that aha moment of growth and of like, you do know the answer. It's about having the confidence. And so much of interviews right now, and it's a really tough job market out there. It's about
Mm-hmm.
having that confidence. And that's where having that back and forth question in a low stakes environment can help you build onto that, because you might already know it, or there's something that you get to learn in a safe place and then be able to practice it. That's something that's really huge. It's mentioned one of the books that I'm reading right now, by Tian Kai Feng, is Humanizing Data Strategy. I love it. It's been really great. It talks about all the things that I value around community and um, learning and gamification, and it's being able to have a safe place to practice is really important. So that experience was really helpful for me.
Talking about interviews, I actually heard about this other way that you can leverage AI during interviews in the interview process, like the question generation process.
Yeah.
So, what you can do is feed in that job description
Hmm.
and ask it what types of questions based on this specific job description would you anticipate me to receive
Yeah.
from, you can say from the HR
Hmm.
recruiter or from the hiring manager or from, whoever else is part of that interview process to really have more of a tailored type discussion with your Gen AI tool, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really great to give it those kinds of roles and to give it that kind of perspective, because yeah, it enhances the users, the interviewee perspective on it too. Because sometimes you think that you can even ask it to evaluate you. It's like, hey, this is the kind of answer that I would like to try. What do you think? Or, from the perspective of the HR or the hiring manager, what do you think that their perspective would be on this? And it's been a really great way to see, how can I make sure that I can give my point? Because there's so much that we want to say in an interview, right? We can't say everything. So it can help to really tailor the message.
Absolutely. What other ways can we use AI for gamification or even like learning
Mhm.
new things?
Yeah, there's always um, some new way, and I'm excited to have those conversations. I'm excited to, when I go away to conferences, whether they're in person or virtual, those are a great opportunity to talk to people and ask
Mhm.
them, what are you doing with AI? How are you leveraging it? How are you not leveraging it? What's not safe to do? So those have been uh, the last few, I've done a few conferences where I've led peer exchange sessions and being able to have a conversation with everyone in the room. Don't get me wrong. I love a good talk. I love being able to hear a speaker, but being able to speak with 60, 80 people in a room and move around, uh, I uh, really encourage going to data conferences and talking to other data professionals.
Absolutely. I love the interactive sessions. I feel like you learn so much more because of that back and forth conversation. And
Mm,
everyone seems to have different perspectives and such interesting questions that you learn so much more in that way.
yeah, I hope to find a conference that's entirely immersive like that. I think that's my dream.
Oh, that would be amazing. We'll
Yeah, it
create
feels just like a
one.
game. Oh, we shall.
You're actually part of a conference that's coming up. Is that right? What
Yeah,
conference are you speaking at next?
I'll be speaking at the Disruptive Data Leadership Conference. So that's coming up in May, and I'll be actually speaking more about being an individual contributor leader. So uh, feel free to check in. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I have more information there. It's entirely virtual, and so I believe once you register for it, you'll have access to the talk. So, like even after the talk goes live.
So, a question that I ask all of my guests is around learning, specifically learning new things.
Mm.
So, what are you currently learning now, and how are you learning it?
So right now, I am learning how to communicate what I do to each person in a way that really targets them. Like I've been doing this throughout my career, but that's where when we mentioned using the generative tools, I've been really fine tuning that uh, because this is something where I've been able to get my experience on the job with it. There's the theory from school. There's the experience on the job, but being able to really fine tune with a little bit more just nuance, it's been really helpful to really aggregate so many different and really map it out. So it's been very much a mapping sort of focus.
What kind of brought you to that specific project?
This project is started with actually an interview question where it started the how to communicate an outcome to different stakeholders. And while my experience of it was really fun and really it pulled on a lot of my experience, there were a few ways where I thought that I really wanted to have a solid mapping, and I hadn't found it anywhere online. Something I wanted to create for myself. It's something that I started wanting to maybe even generate content around it since I hadn't been finding it in the way that I would like to see it. And so I decided to go on this mapping journey to then think about how do I want to represent this in a more shareable way, a more printable way, something that can be uh, more easily shared. Because something that I really value is that if I'm learning something, I really want to make sure that if I can't find it, that I can put it out into the community as well so that others can learn from it.
Absolutely. I think the hardest part about building those roadmaps or any mapping exercise is the fact that in every single situation, it's very different. And so all of these roadmaps, all of these mappings have a lot to tailor
Mm,
to get them exactly right for each individual person.
right. Yeah.
So you're leveraging these Gen AI tools for the tailoring.
Yes. So leveraging those AI tools in the different, like the different formats, and really, it's been a lot of critical thinking on what data strategies work best for each different type. It's something where when wanting to think through the questions that they would ask and the questions that they aren't asking, but should. So that's one of the other things that's been helpful is that my experience shows what they have been asking, and there have been moments where I've learned what to ask. I remember building out um, we were moving everything from just Excel graphs to over to like dashboards for the first time, building over in the cloud warehouses for the first time. And the ask was to make everything in the dashboards just like what we had. And that's what was done. But there was still a disconnect in what was wanted was more drill downs. The why was missing. So
Mm.
that's one thing that the mapping has helped with is to uncover those questions that should be asked about the why and about the, what is it that the uh, this person might want to ask based on their role that they haven't that they don't typically ask. It's been helpful for that kind of generative like creativity.
Absolutely. Have you heard of the five whys?
Five whys. Can you tell me more about them?
I think that there's a whole book around it, but it's basically the concept of drilling in, asking why at least five times to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get to that root cause of when you're, talking with a client or a stakeholder and they're giving you requirements. You just keep asking why, kind of like a toddler, right? And
Mm-hmm.
really have them think about, like, why do I need this dashboard, so that you can really pull out those design requirements so that you can build something that's meaningful for that client or stakeholder.
Exactly. Yeah, I am. That's so important to have. If they're asking for something that's real time, but they're only going to need it, once a month, then that's something that can be negotiated and talked about the resources that are being used. So it's been really helpful to have that sort of mapping ahead of time. It saves everyone some time and some resources.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like with what you just mentioned, that they only review the dashboard once a month, but they need, they say that they need real time data. And it's
Mhm.
a very big uplift to connect something in a real time manner. But if you're only looking at it once a month, then you don't need that,
Yeah,
time capability.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other questions have you kind of uncovered that are the questions that you should have asked? Have you seen any trends
Hmm.
there?
It's also a question of, what does this person value, right? So we talked about the question around feedback too, right, earlier. So it's when they might want to receive feedback, but also when understanding from, let's say, we talked earlier that it's helpful to get other perspectives when we reach out just to learn something and integrate it. But if we haven't had those experiences, that's where it can give questions along the lines of this stakeholder would value the cost saved versus how much is being gained, right? So being
Mm.
able to understand that difference and who to ask and what values that they might want to hear, that's been really helpful.
You never know. It's funny because you never know what you don't know, right? So it's
Mhm.
hard to come up with those questions that you should be asking that you don't know
Mhm.
about.
Yeah. And beyond the generative AI tools, also looking into mentorship. We talked about it earlier about being a mentor, but also you can be both a mentor and a mentee at the same time. That's something that I say in community all the time. And asking a mentor who's been through these experiences, that's where we can also gain that. The AI tools are helpful, but it shouldn't distract us too from the people who want to help and the people who are in our lives that have experienced what we're going through. And sometimes, if a mentor is very busy, they don't have as much time to play around with the AI tools, it's been very helpful as a mentor to get some of the feedback from a mentee that's been using it more often. So mentorship is just as much of a two-way street. So
I completely agree. We're all learning from each other. And
Hmm.
because we all have different perspectives, it's always going to be that two-way street that you mentioned.
Hmm.
Yeah. Something to embrace.
Yeah.
So, for the folks that are out there that are very new to data, that might be trying to get into the field or even transition from a different field in general, what would you kind of give them as a recommendation or words of encouragement?
For words of encouragement, switching over into data, it is a field that touches every different aspect of business, and no matter where you're coming in from, you have a knowledge base that you can bring into data that's actually really helpful. So I would highly encourage to look at the ways that your previous knowledge is transferable. And again, if you're having trouble thinking of it and ideating it, the generative AI tools can help there as well. So there's always some new way to find what you're good at that can be leveraged in the data space.
Well, thank you so much, Phoenix, for coming on the show. If anybody has any questions for you, where can they find and or follow you, or what do you have going on?
Yeah, it is easiest to follow me on LinkedIn, Phoenix J, Phoenix like the bird, J like the bird as well. And as you mentioned earlier, you can find me at the Disruptive Data Leadership Summit, and I'll make sure to post anything else out there on LinkedIn.
Amazing. And we'll provide some links in the comments as well. And I hope, as always, folks, happy learning. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Data Podcast for Nerds. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you want to transition your career and become a data professional, follow me on LinkedIn for even more tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits.